Who represents the best of humanity?
It's an Italian nun called Rachel Fazera.
The young students that I met during the Arab Spring.
An amazing Chinese doctor called Gao Yaojie, who was already in her 80s when I met her, and she had just brought to public attention an AIDS epidemic in central China caused by unsafe selling of blood for transfusions, which was a very specific health scandal, but the provincial authorities were determined to cover up. And she was a great fiery character, and she had brought this scandal to the attention of the world and indeed of the Chinese central authorities.
I was in Uganda, northern Uganda last week, interviewing former child soldiers from the Lord's Resistance Army. A lady called Janet, who works for a local charity, Watiek, again interpreted for us. And it was only on the last day I discovered that she herself had been a child soldier. But day after day, she sits reliving those experiences with other people from the Lord's Resistance Army. I think that must be incredibly hard for her, but she knows that for them, it's much easier talking to someone who understands. And so she carries on doing it.
I think the most impressive person I interviewed was Muhammad Yunus, who founded the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 and transformed the lives of millions of Bangladeshis with his microcredit scheme. You know, he's not about piety, not about charity, he's about empowering people.
Covering wars, you see the best and the worst in people all the time. So I can't really nominate one, but there are many, many stories. I met women in Aleppo who were risking everything to cross front lines, to sneak in medicines in their clothes to people who are living in besieged suburbs of Damascus. So crossing the entire country. Doctors, again, living in Aleppo under constant shell fire, and they could leave and they could go to a better country, but they want to stay there to try to do what they can.
Some of the people I most admired were just the young students that I met during the Arab Spring in places like Egypt, who were risking an awful lot to go out on the streets and demonstrate. Not just the risk of getting arrested and getting a very nasty kicking off the local cops, but they would get a black mark on their career, on their cards from the intelligence people forever, and yet they went out and did it.
Rachel Fazera, an Italian nun who I interviewed in Uganda, and she taught at a secondary school in Uganda. And one day she came back to discover that her school had been raided overnight by rebels from the Lord's Resistance Army, and they'd carted off 150 or so girls to recruit them as child soldiers. And she came back and discovered this had happened. So she set off into the bush on her own, followed the tracks of the rebels with the child captives, tracked them down, went to see the rebel commander and demanded that he release the girls. And he was so impressed that he did actually release 30 of them on the spot, and she brought them home. Now, in terms of human achievement, that's pretty remarkable.